Hey guys, Spanners here, dropping in as we explore some great expectations and some rubbish expectations for 2025. We're going to sneak into the boardrooms of all the F1 teams and see what the board are telling the team principals they expect for 2025. Thank you very much to Kyle, Jono and Matt for filling in for me. I am back at 80%, so hopefully today goes well. And we're also going to explore some Formula One news. I'm joined in the shed by Matt Trumpets. Hello, Matt.
Only 12 more years till testing.
No, it's like 5 weeks, isn't it? It's like 4-5 weeks.
It's all the same to me, man. It's like we were so busy all season long, and now suddenly it feels like forever till we actually see cars again.
Yeah, and they're going to fill that period with these livery launches. We've got the main F1 launch, which I'm really dubious about. I know you've got a complete schedule of the livery launches and the TV days and announcements that the teams are going to do, and we'll go through it, but I do find it harder and harder to get excited when you go, okay, Kick Sauber have got their launch day, and it comes to that day and they go, here's a rendering and the CEO saying things.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Some people really like to get into the details with delivery, and good for you. I'm glad you have a thing that makes you happy. It's never been, once I know what the car looks like on track, so I know what to look for in the races, that's all I really care about. But I get that there are people who are as nerdy about the design process as I am about tires. So, you know, chapeau for that. And yeah, we'll get you the details as to when we're going to see what.
I normally don't get into sort of any of the liveries, and I'm much like you. Yeah, as long as it's a distinct colour and it doesn't break my rule of having the car look broadly the same colour from all angles. I can't stand, like, from the front it's white and from the back it's black. But if they've got just a distinctive colour and livery that I can get on board with and go forward with, that's normally all I care about. But again, massive hypocrite, because as the Ferrari stuff comes out, I've suddenly got this opinion about the HP circle and the HP blue. Like, why do I have that opinion?
I don't really know. I'm just imagining in my head everyone showing up to the O2 Arena to discover all the teams have chosen Battleship Gray as their color this year.
Oh, like carbon black last year.
Yes, exactly. They're all the same color. Good luck picking them out on the track.
We're also joined by Alex Geensy Van Gene. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Spanners. I had totally forgotten during this time of the year that Formula One even exists until you reminded me there's a podcast to do. I during the off season I go into full hibernation mode when it comes to F1. But however, when you guys start talking about liveries, I'm like, ooh, that means we must be getting close again to all the memes of people saying, oh look, the Red Bull looks exactly the same as it has done for the last 25 years. I've actually already seen one of those, so I expect a flurry more to come. But all I care about, as every single year I've been a Formula One fan, is that red Ferrari. That's all I care about.
Is it?
Tifosi all the way. Yeah, that's all I've ever been is a Ferrari fan.
That's right, Alex. You and me in our pre-season chats about what red exactly the Ferrari livery will be this season. We've always done that for the last 10 years.
Absolutely. Forza Ferrari.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I wouldn't have cared in a previous season about the disgusting blue HP abomination on top of the suits, but at the front of the Ferrari suits, suddenly I have an opinion.
For me, it's more the white strip where the name is.
Oh yeah, that looks terrible.
I think that breaks it up. I don't like that.
Yeah, we are the worst neutrals ever, Alex. Well, do you want to spend the rest of the season gaslighting people that we're neutrals, or should we just go all in Hamilton Tifosi this year?
When have I ever been anything other than neutral, Spanish?
Okay, so the thrust of today's show is actually because it did start with Ferrari. Matt said to me that he thought that Ferrari would be happy with some podiums, with a couple of wins, and that made my eyes go on stalks. It's like, no, you just spent £85 billion on a driver signing. It is the end of a mature regulation set. You must be looking for titles in 2025. I don't think there's going to be a better opportunity for Ferrari to win titles. So I think let's just go into that now, Matt. It's basically, what are the expectations of the boards of the various teams? I'll do Williams second, but starting with Ferrari, Matt, I'm going really extreme on this. If you're the Ferrari board, you are telling Fred Vasseur last season, yeah, look, everything this season now is basically a testing ground for 2025. Come out of the blocks 2025 in a 2022 style spirit. Go for it. Go win the title with Lewis Hamilton, because we have no idea how our power unit's going to perform in 2026.
Well, I think what you're looking at a minimum, if you want to call this a successful Ferrari season, which is we're defining metrics for the teams here, I think you have to start with both drivers need multiple wins this season. That's your dead minimum, not just a fluke win for Hamilton. I think at a dead minimum, you're going to need both drivers to win multiple races. Now, that's not my only metric, but that's where I'm starting.
Alex?
I'm sorry, Matt. I can't agree with you. That should be a given, multiple victories for both of those drivers. It should be an absolute given, non-negotiable. An absolute minimum is at least one of the titles. We have potentially a weakened Red Bull without Adrian Newey and a car that I'm hearing can't find more downforce, and a definite weakened Mercedes team without the input of Lewis Hamilton, and again, of input I've had, they found a little bit but don't think they'll be at the front. Surely they have a much better lineup than McLaren currently do, and if they can put things together, one title, either one of them, is a minimum, surely.
I would agree with you. And in fact, that was one of the things I put down to make a successful season was either the drivers or the constructors championship. They got very close last season. They got kind of done a little bit by the FIA, vacillating over the flexi wings thing. But here's the thing I know is they are, according to Vasseur, bringing a 99% new car, including switching to pull rod.
Oh, I like this.
Suspension at the front. So I'm keeping my expectations on the success side is they're going to be successful if both Lewis and Charles win multiple races. On the flip side, if Lewis doesn't win anything and doesn't get close to a podium, they've got a real problem.
Imagine having Leclerc, who I think has won 8 Grand Prix or so at this point and had 85 pole positions. And then you've got Lewis Hamilton, who's won 1,000 races. And you've got a car that has actually been pretty good last season and has that potential. And you've got all that investment. You've got new management. This is meant to be not your grandfather's Ferrari. And you don't manage to win a race at all. Now, that would be a complete disaster. I don't think it's the minimum. I do think the minimum is title. So you've got 2 drivers who are absolutely proven to deliver. So straight away, you know you don't have a Verstappen-Perez situation. You know you don't have a Piastri-type driver who shows weekends of brilliance. But let's be fair, has gone missing for the first 2 seasons, has had several Grand Prix where he's gone missing and he's not been there. You know you don't have that. You've got Mercedes, who've got a complete rookie, and George Russell as well, who does occasionally suffer from just not being able to deliver race pace on a Sunday. You have got the best driver lineup in that top 4. You have to. In fact, I would say the constructors, Alex, is the minimum. So if you just won the constructors title next season, you go, I guess we kind of delivered, but we missed an opportunity for the championship.
I think if they win the constructors championship, it's why didn't we win the drivers? And it'd be a very close look into that. The only thing I can see them, if they've got a car that is, as long as the car is capable of competing for that title, I think the only reason they don't win the drivers championship is if Lando has a dominant car, Piastri doesn't step up to the plate, and Lewis and Charles nick points from each other.
Yep, it's that third point that worries me about the drivers. If they are both able to manipulate the car around the track pretty handily, then they risk taking the title away from each other. Whereas if you go to McLaren and Norris continues to dominate Piastri points-wise, because he scored like 25%, I think, last season, then I could see Norris getting away with it cleanly. But of the 2, I think you're right. The constructors is if you're talking about a totally successful season, you need both drivers to have multiple wins, and you do need to nick a title. But that doesn't mean if you don't, you've had a failure of a season. That's my difference.
And one of the big sort of maverick factors is these FIA regulations and the way they're managing them. So Red Bull and McLaren were clearly dancing on this limit around various regulations. So if we want
Mercedes, too.
Okay, so we're talking about the
flexi wings.
Yeah, the flexi wings.
Mercedes.
So it's a lot of it is really down to the FIA, how they enforce it. They have a real kind of opportunity to put their thumb on the scale, or clamp down and be very authoritarian, or kind of let certain things go. There's going to be a lot of lobbying going on in the background. So that's an unknown factor. But I don't think Ferrari are quite as vulnerable to those factors as the other cars. They've had a decent car at times. They look to be making good progress. And I look at Red Bull and I think, this could be a fall off the cliff season for them. Okay, so if you said hand on heart, who's fighting for the constructors? My bet now would be it's a McLaren versus Ferrari constructors next season. Oh, everyone's agreeing. Oh, I've never had this on Missed Apex. People are agreeing with me.
For the constructors, for sure.
Yeah.
I think for the drivers, we got to wait and see what Red Bull comes up with. What's interesting about this, and I'll just recap it for anyone who missed it last season, about the flexi wings. They changed the ruling. They said it was going to be okay for 25. Now they said you can't have it after the summer break. So teams that have embarked on that development path, and apparently they've known about it for a while, like November, but for teams on that development path, that means a major change after the summer break when they're really wanting to concentrate on 26. So one of the most interesting things is going to be, did teams that waited to hear from the FIA about the legality of it for 25 change their development path for 25 based on the information and now have to change it back again?
Oh man, did you see how easily I've slipped into being an over-optimistic Ferrari fan pre-season? Like I haven't skipped a beat. I've gone straight in. Heraclea pointing out, saying, well, hang on a minute, they didn't win in 2024. What's making me so confident that they're going to have a push? Well, I would say they've got a stronger driver lineup. That would be my first argument. And go on then, Matt.
Well, no, go ahead. Finish your other point, and then I'll jump in.
I really feel like McLaren had their wings clipped towards the end of last season. And if Ferrari are coming in with such a different car, there's a wave of optimism behind Ferrari. And for once, I'm on the inside looking out, and I choose to believe it.
So I will just follow up with, the thing that people miss is that Ferrari and Red Bull waited 3 to 4 months before the FIA said that the McLaren Mercedes flexi wing development path was legal, was acceptable. And in that entire 3 to 4 months, McLaren had, and Mercedes too, a distinctive advantage over them because they were being able to take advantage of a better turn-in because they were able to run higher downforce and suffer less drag penalty on the straights. And it was supposed to be this way for all of 25, which evens the playing field at least. But now, 6 months in, the summer break, they're going to take that toy away from everybody. And no one really knows what's going to happen at that point. So, I think that the Constructors' Championship is a success. Multiple wins for drivers has to be part of it. It's not a success if they don't get that. Or a failure if they finish worse than last season, if they finish below second in the Constructors, I think is an utter failure of a season.
So that would be a disaster.
Also, there's a difference between what we think will happen. So, if you press me for a guess, I'll give a guess, and I have done. But I think the conversation from the board to Fred Vasseur is like, okay, your job is performance related, right? And in 2023, we were not expecting you to deliver Leclerc as World Drivers' Champion because we saw the landscape in a certain way. But you should have been parking some of your 2024 ambition for 2025. Well, we have this marquee driver. We have a regulation set where we've been pretty good, and we've had this opportunity to kind of go, okay, pause, reset, let the guys get ahead. Now, in 2025, take everything you've learned and go into 2025 looking for this championship because we're facing an uphill battle in 2026. So, Fred, you want a job going forward, you need to at least be in both title fights in 2025. So I think that is the expectation. That is the great expectation. And Vasseur might be going from kind of bubbly, happy-go-lucky, yeah, we're in this building phase, And a lot of team principals and football managers, they get that little grace period, don't they? But I think this is the season for Fred Vasseur where he will be asked now to deliver.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I say worse than second, they're done for. Would you like a little bit of hope before we move on?
False hope or genuine hope? Because
yes.
I'll take whatever you've got. I'll take anything you've got.
So I mentioned how much of the Ferrari design was changing for this season. And it's a little bit terrifying if you've seen other teams go through this, like Red Bull did last season, and it did not work out for them at all. But one thing I will say from my various technical discussions is that Ferrari may not be the most creative design team, but they are absolutely one of the best at looking around at everybody else's creative designs and adapting it for themselves.
They're a great copycat, is what you're saying, Matt.
Call me Xerox.
Okay.
Just as long as it's not a Xerox machine in England somewhere with Ferrari documentation, then it's fine.
Wow, I wish I was young enough to know what a Xerox was. But we should move down the grid. The next team I want to talk about is Williams. So I think James Vowles has done a bit of a blinder from a career point of view, but we might just be getting to the end of his good grace period. And now it's not totally dissimilar to the sort of period of time that Fred Vasseur has had. So James Vowles, I think, has been in charge of Williams since 2023. And in that time said, okay, guys, I'm in here to shake things up and change everything. And we are going to be terrible and write things off for the next 3 years. Don't expect any results for the next 3 years, which coincidentally is really, really good for my job security for 3 years out of my next contract. But he's thrown his eggs. All his eggs are in the we will do well in 2026. This is the wave we will ride, the wave we are going to ride. And that's a very common tactic in Formula One to say, look, we're going to look to this new regulation set. And there's been a freedom at Williams, which is great, because he's been able to say, hey, break everything, tear everything down, forget everything you know. You're not going to be judged by the specific results, I think particularly last year. And they were saying, just pull everything apart and put it back together again, build it upside down, drive with 3 tires and just see what happens. And this is really great innovative thinking. And it was a team that was really kind of stuck and was almost running down this legacy when Claire Williams was in charge, really struggling with money, having to, let's be honest, be saddled with lineups like Sirotkin and Stroll. And then more recently with Logan Sargent and Alex Albon. So Alex Albon, I would class as a good family pay driver. So I think he's a great driver for someone who brings family money in to pay for his drive. And if you don't think Alex Albon pays with family money for his drive, that's fine. I'm happy for that to be your opinion. My opinion is that he does. I know they really work hard to not publicize these kind of things. But James Vowles now has a team where he's had 2 years to rip things apart and break stuff. And he's had the biggest driver upgrade in F1 history. Logan Sargent at the beginning of the season to Carlos Blinking Sainz at the beginning of this season. So tell me that James Vowles, that all that breaking stuff and putting stuff back together hasn't put you in a position to deliver Carlos Sainz a car where at the very least you know that Carlos Sainz is going to show you what a Carlos Sainz type driver can do in a car that's been ripped apart and had the freedom to experiment. Don't tell me that in 2025 it's another written off experimental season. They need to be climbing the grid now. Williams needs to be P6. It needs to be up there battling the likes of, oh good, I've got a disagreement here. It needs to be battling the likes of Haas, of Alpine, and maybe even Aston Martin. It needs to be nibbling at their toes and making them worried on at least at their peak weekends. Alex.
You had me up until now that they've got Carlos, it's got to be this year. No.
Some progress.
Because some progress, yeah. But I mean, Matt told us before the show, but my memory's terrible. Where did they finish the last 2 years, Matt?
It was 7th and 23 and 9th in 24.
Okay, so ninth. So last year they've broken everything, and they're still breaking everything.
Wow,
But
they
now
did a
they've brought-
great
but-
job of breaking everything then. They really
now-
broke everything.
But now they've brought Carlos in to help push them forward, to prepare them and ready them for 2026.
Yeah. So at a minimum, what they have to do is build a good enough car for Carlos Sainz to demonstrate he's better than Alex Albon. Because if they can't do that, they're going to be nowhere once again. That's my first.
Here's a question then. If Carlos and Alex are similar on pace throughout the season, is that Alex is better than we expected or Carlos is worse than we expected?
Oh,
I think the car is worse than we expected.
No, I think that's a fair question. By the way, can I address that question? So, because
sure.
I'm not a critic of Albon. It's just nothing's ever made me.
I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm just saying.
No, I don't think it's going to. I would be so surprised if we have a season where they're really even. I'm expecting Sainz to be fairly clear. It's not like Albon can't keep it on track. It's not like Albon doesn't have any pace. I'm just expecting Carlos Sainz to get that team rallying him around him and inspiring them as well, more than anything, and just having that
make it his team
and have that distance clear. If there ends up being no distance, then I think my honest reaction to that will be I've underestimated Alex Albon. That answers the question, Alex, doesn't it? So I will say, yeah.
I'm glad you said that because Carlos has proved himself against the best in the business that he's not necessarily on their level, but he ain't far behind and nipping at their heels.
But he can play at their level. So Carlos Sainz can play on the same level as any teammate he's put against him. Whether or not he beats them or not, he's in the game.
How long is Sainz's contract? Do we know?
No, 2 years.
It is 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see how much politicking he does in the car if the car is terrible. So because we know how much he does like to talk from the cockpit and manage his own race from the cockpit. But I mean, that going back to the Ferrari conversation, that's my only worry with Ferrari is them thinking about what's going to happen. So if Carlos has to do all that from the pit lane, from the cockpit again, that'll be a very interesting sight to see.
Well, what worries me about Williams is not just that they've made a car that is slow, but they've made a car that is both slow and unpredictable. And so my entire thesis here is if they don't make a predictable car, your level of talent as a driver is kind of irrelevant. And that's what I mean by that. If they don't build a good enough car, you may not see a difference between Sainz and Albon because neither one of them knows what's going to happen when they turn into the next corner. If you catch my drift, the car has to be good enough to separate out the really good from the amazingly good.
I forgot you're a bit of a Carlos Sainz fan because I was just thinking to myself, now, if I was a Carlos Sainz fan, that is the narrative I would go to straight away if he wasn't able to get clear of Albon. But I think it's reasonable. So there are some guys where you just won't be able to kind of stretch out and show the full potential.
Exactly. And this was a sort of a pre-show chat that Geensy and I were having, that it is a thing that sometimes you see a person at a team, they go to a new team, you're like, wow, they're really good against this person. How did I not know this? And it's because the car they were driving in wasn't good enough for them to demonstrate the ceiling that they have as a driver, if you catch my drift. Now, having said that, I think if we're talking about Williams, they have one other thing they absolutely must do. They have to crush Visa. That is their rival. They have to beat them this season.
Okay, good.
There's no excuses left.
Put a pin in that then, because that's great for boardroom expectations. But Mark in the live chat says, I think everyone has underestimated Albon, although I'm fully prepared to be proven wrong. It's definitely an outstanding question mark, and I think it's a fair debate. It could go either way, but I think, like, say, for example, Matt, we were talking about Ocon pre-show. Like, I think we know where Ocon is. I don't think people really know exactly where Albon is on the F1 ladder.
I think the problem with that comes because he came into the sport with George Russell and Lando Norris, and both George and Lando talk so highly of Alex from his karting and his previous car days, and him being the one that they were all chasing. So I'm very much in the camp of I really want Alex to prove that he is a really, really high, top to middle top driver and not sort of just a pay driver, and he's only there. I hope that he's there because he can put some money in, but he's also fast enough to warrant it. Is my hope for him, and I hope he doesn't get destroyed by Carlos. Because if he gets destroyed by Carlos, that's career over.
Yes, I think that's fair. If he gets destroyed this year by Carlos coming into his team and coming into Albon's team, that is going to kill his reputation. But all he has to do is match Carlos Sainz, and his reputation is going to go through the roof. And people like me will have to just shut up a little bit.
Because surely no one expects him to beat Carlos.
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone is expecting him to beat Carlos Sainz. So if he gets close, I think this is a winnable reputational battle for Alex Albon.
And let's remember, Carlos is the newcomer at this team with a new power unit. So if there's ever a season we're going to see Alex do well or beat Carlos, it should be this season. But that said, I fully expect it to lean 55-45 in terms of points scored, because I think, and it's not that Carlos will necessarily even be faster on raw pace, but it's that thing of his relentless consistency and his constant ability to find another half a tenth
and great
by putting the work in. You know what I'm saying? And
even
just his
strategic,
his situational awareness.
There we go. Yeah, even mid-race, putting the work in. Sainz, unless he's just pulled the wool over our eyes, and it's like the goalkeeper who does that big gymnastic dive to the mid-level shot and go all for the cameras. Maybe Sainz has pulled the wool over our eyes, but he seems like he's really on top of the strategy and knows what's going on in the race. EJ in our Patreon Discord says Williams have made a car that is slow and often in the wall and broken. It's a concern. It is a concern how crashable that Williams is. So like they had the same thing with Haas a few years back, where you go, is it that Schumacher and Mazepin are just two of the crashiest drivers on the grid, or is that a really hard car to keep on the road? Now, with the Williams, Sargent made it look like a super, like he was just terrible and crashing it everywhere. But then, like, Albon had quite a few big shunts last season. And then Colapinto went and had quite a few big shunts. And then, you know, because all of that was suiting whatever narrative I wanted at the time, it's easy to then ignore and go, hang on a minute, is that Williams inherently a car that is prone to being stuck in the wall? I think that's a big question mark for Williams as well. So maybe, Matt, for the board, do they say, hey, here's our expectation, James. Could you keep it out of the damn Armco?
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's what I mean. They have to build a predictable car. Their biggest problem was they had inconsistent balance from corner to corner. None of the drivers, neither of the three drivers knew what they were going to get. If they can't fix that, that's a serious fail for this season.
And that's another reason Carlos Sainz is a good hand for them to have, because Carlos is not really a crashy driver. No. So to have him as a driver and go, right, I don't crash very often, but if all of a sudden he's spinning and having lots of issues in this new car, then we can go, okay, this car must be horrible to drive. And I don't think he will hark back from saying that it's a difficult car to drive. So I'm looking forward to his radio and his post race stuff, because he doesn't hold back.
He's not a quiet little mouse, is he? He will tell us. But like, was it Singapore recently in qualifying where he had an off, just went straight into the wall? And it's one of those things where you don't go, oh, Carlos, what have you done? You go, oh, I wonder if there was something wrong with the car. You know, that's where our brain goes and goes, oh, maybe and there was something. There was an issue, I think, with the car for Singapore. So yeah, interesting one. I hope the Williams board have told him that they're meant to go and score points this season, and it's not a third year in a row of break things. If it is, and we get to the end of 2025, it's another bad Williams season, but they're still saying yes, but we've been fully focusing on 2026. It is a big gamble, because I really, really like James Vowles. As much as you can be a fan of a team principal, I'm a fan of James Vowles. Oh, I'm sitting here in a Williams racing shirt again today. So I want that all to be true. If we get to 2026 and it's just like back third of the grid, it's not good enough. Like if it's a third of the way into 2026 season and you're not P6, P5 going up forward, I think you sack James Vowles on the spot.
So with that said, in their break everything rhetoric. By the time we get to 2026, where do they need to be on the grid to say this has worked, or
sixth?
James, what the hell have you done for the last 4 years?
That's the one. That's the question.
Right. I just want to jump in here and say that realistically, Visa is their competitor they can catch. Maybe Alpine.
That can't
I think
be.
If you're talking, that
can't be the 26 result.
That can't be the 2026.
Not 26.
No.
25.
No. When you've said I'm going to park 3 whole seasons for 2026, that isn't to jump 2 places up the grid. If you want to say, okay, we're going to make incremental progress, then maybe in 2026 you can go, okay, we've really consolidated P6, P7 now. That's where we're at. But the Valve's tactic now, I think, demands more from 2026. If you can go down to P9 and still have everyone be positive about what you're doing, 2026 has got to be a miracle.
If we're saying that at the moment Aston is probably the 5th best team, if they need to be, and that's still the case going into 2026, that's where Williams need to be for me to show that this has actually been a success. I'm not always expecting them to go to the front of the grid, but they have to be fighting for.
I want them to go to the front of the grid.
I want them to go to the front of the grid too. I'm my car. I'm going to have number 5 on my car, and I've got the Nigel Mansell numbering on my cart. That's how much I want Williams.
And anyone who says that's a Vettel's number is just
wrong.
A child that can go walk off a pier.
Exactly. But yeah, so that's where they have to be. That's where I want them to be, but that's where they have to be to have this proven and worked. Otherwise, James is in trouble.
All right, Matt, where do you think's what's a good team to go to for our great expectations? Great and rubbish expectations. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the launches schedule. I think we'll go through that at some point.
The launches are very quick.
Oh, I wonder when will Red Bull reveal their exact same livery?
Well, I think the liveries are all happening on the O2 event for the most part. But some of the cars will be on track before testing. So I just want to make sure people who are interested know to look out for that. I don't know. I mean,
Aston?
We were sort of talking about Aston a little bit.
Go on then.
And
Why don't you lead us off?
I think there's some interesting stuff in there to discuss.
Go on then.
Well, for me, there's 2 things. So Aston finished in 5th place. They are the best of the rest. They have more money, more facilities. They've got Adrian Newey. They have most of the Middle East invested in their team now. Then what they will tell you is they're aiming at 26 with Honda is to be the really competitive year. And, given when people are coming on board, I think that's reasonable sort of for them to go from 5th up to, we're back to fighting for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd again. But I'll tell you something I noticed. I think if they want to have a successful season, there are 2 key factors here. First of all, they were really only competitive the first 6 races of the year. He finished in the top 10, Alonso did, in the first 6 races. And then after that, he only finished in the top 10 7 more times the entire rest of the season. They're going to have to do better. I'm sorry. And the other thing is, and I feel bad, but if you're a Lance Stroll fan, he's going to have to score a higher percentage of points, like up around 40%, because I think he was around 25%, and that's not enough. I mean, we can just look at Perez, for example, to be hanging out on a team like that.
Aston Martin have carried over all the through season principles that Force India had and Racing Point have and Aston Martin had. This characteristic of performing much better at the beginning of the season and then not keeping up with the upgrades. Like, that's completely understandable in the Force India time where you go, right, obviously there's guys there who are really good and they're great at building a car and coming out the season kicking and screaming. And it was commonly acknowledged pre-cost cap that Force India was the best pound for pound team in Formula One. When it came to amount spent per point, Force India were absolutely top. But why has that continued to Aston Martin? Why do they still have that characteristic where they had 2023, where they had podiums? They were doing so well that Alonso was angry at non-podiums and was saying to everyone, that's the last time we'll be off the podium. And they haven't been on the podium since. And 2024, again, they're only scoring points at the beginning of the season. Like, what is it? It's a new team. It's new people. There's new money in there. They've got new facilities. Why is that trait carried over?
Because Alonso is incapable of improving a car. Because every single team he goes to, whenever he gets there, the car's fine and gets progressively worse. He blames the team and leaves under a cloud.
Well,
it's just the facts.
He might leave under a cloud from Aston, but I will point out they sacked their head of aero that they stole from Red Bull.
Dan
Fallows?
Dan Fallows. You told me in 2023, Matt.
Ooh.
2023. Do you know?
I remember nothing from 2023. So sure.
No. It's a throwaway comment that you made that I've just clung onto for like 2 years. It's when they were doing really well, and I had predicted that Aston Martin would fall away, and they didn't fall away quite as quickly, but they did fall away in the end. And I thought, well, this is really following that same kind of Force India model. And your thing was, but Dan Fallows. So in previous years they might have done, but Dan Fallows knows how to develop and go forward.
Well, yeah, because he had come from Red Bull. He was part of that system. And I believe he had come onto the team at that time where it's that time where you say, oh, he's come onto the team now, but you're not really going to see the effect of him being there till next season. So it's a reasonable bet. But what we all know ultimately happened was they got hung up in the flexi floor, I think it was, regulations. And when that toy got taken away from them, Fallows and the people working with him were unable to really bring them back to the top of the heap the way they were when they had that toy. It's like they had this idea and it worked great, but once it went away, they couldn't figure anything else out. Now they've got Adrian Newey, so we shall see.
And wasn't Fallows an Adrian Newey apprentice as such?
Yep.
Wasn't he Adrian's, which is part of the reason they're like, okay, well, we're not going to get Adrian, so let's take, the guy he's been training and bringing up.
Well,
but
yeah. I mean,
interestingly, it'll be, sorry, Matt, interestingly, it'll be interesting to see whether it is all down to Adrian Newey in the end. Because if if Aston Martin don't make strides into next year, how long have we got until the Adrian Newey thing fails?
Okay, I've just done some Googling, right? So the gardening leave, I think, ends in March.
Yeah.
So he can come on board in March, but he's primarily being brought on board to develop the 2026 car.
Correct.
But you know all the secrets of the championship winning car for the last 3 years. So, okay, let's assume that the gardening leave, like, how strictly do we think that's adhered to? What, Adrian Newey hasn't had a couple of coffees? He's not been in Costa Coffee in Milton Keynes with the technical guys at Aston Martin. So let's assume they've stuck to all the rules and everything. That first upgrade package around kind of Barcelona could be very telling, because he's going to come in, he's going to see what Aston Martin have built and go, oh, you've put the Ghibli What's-It on the Ferrari. You shouldn't have done that. No,
Where's your flux capacitor?
Like 88 miles an hour, that thing's going to burn up.
So two interesting things here about Newey. One is his absolute comment that lack of experience is why Red Bull had the issues they had last season with their car build.
They forgot how to fit asymmetric braking. Okay, yeah.
And the other thing that always sticks with me is as we were interviewing someone who worked in some aerodynamic capacity and had worked with Newey, and or maybe I was just having this conversation with someone offline. It's, my memory, whatever. It kind of exists theoretically. And I said, well, what's that like? And they said, well, the interesting thing about Newey is if you're working on a problem and he wanders around and he sees your problem, he will tell you that what he thinks the solution is without a computer or anything else. And he's almost always absolutely correct about it. It's just like, will it be enough to fix Aston? Will the Honda deliver the power unit they can potentially deliver? I don't know that, but it's 26 is the year for Aston, but we're concerned with 25. So to me, yeah, no, go ahead.
No, go on. The whole thing about Adrian seeing the airflow 10 years ago, fair enough. I just don't see that he can possibly be that accurate unless he's some sort of savant, and I highly doubt it.
That's what I'm thinking. He's got this ability. Not that he's the best designer, not that there aren't other people equally creatively talented and gifted at designing cars. But when it comes to the nuts and bolts, development, and problem solving, he has a massive wealth of experience at some of the best teams across the grid, and he will know more of the pitfalls to avoid than anyone else.
Yeah, man. So, okay, you're the board at Aston Martin, and you're Lawrence Stroll. I've come in here. I've got you the best designers. I have you the greatest young talent in the form of Lance Stroll, and you have Fernando Alonso here. What is the expectation from the board, aka Lance Stroll, for 2025? Surely this is not a holding year. This has got to be Adrian's coming in. Everybody look busy. Adrian Newey, actual Adrian Newey, is going to be walking past your workstations from March 2025. Try not to look like a mug in front of the greatest designer in Formula One history. Everyone's backs have got to be up there, and you've got to go, right, by the end of the season, we need to be definitely top 5. 100% top 5 for Aston Martin, nothing less. Or the next thing we give Adrian Newey, apart from a tour of the factory, is a big cattle prod, and he can just go around zapping people until they retire, and he can cull whoever he wants. Now, the rumor was that at Ferrari, one of the things Ferrari didn't want to give him is hiring and firing powers. I would imagine that at Aston Martin, if Adrian Newey looks at you, then looks over to the side of his entourage and nods, people in suits will come and drag you out of the Aston Martin office. So that is a huge motivator.
He's going to be standing on people's desks eating their pet fish.
There we go. I think Adrian Newey's got a special cat who, if Adrian Newey's cat sits on your desk, you know you're doomed. Like the death cat they get at some hospices. I think that's what's going to be going on there. All right, Matt, where are we going next?
Well, I mean, there is really only one other place to go after we've had this discussion about Adrian Newey. And I think it's to the biggest question mark on the grid, and that's Red Bull.
Ooh, all right. Let's let Alex kick this one off then. Alex, you're the board. My goodness, I don't even know what the shape of the Red Bull board is these days. You've got, third generation now.
I hear it's semicircular.
Is it set? Oh, right. There you go. That answers that then. There we go. What do you think the Red Bull board are sending down towards Christian Horner and saying this is what's got to happen in 2025?
Makes Max win the title. Surely that's all they give any form of care about. God, I had to think of very different words.
I'm going to disagree there. I'm going to disagree in a minute, sort of for the sake of it. But tell me why.
Because I think the reason they have to go after the Drivers' Championship, and that's what they're going for, because if they don't, Max will leave, and he'll take the apparent $1 billion that has been offered by Aston Martin. But I think if he notices the car isn't good enough, we've seen Red Bull drivers before enact a performance clause to get out of contracts. He has to be in the hunt for his 5th title.
In the hunt is not winning. If I'm the board of Red Bull, I have 4 key metrics for the team. One of them, the most important, is Max has to win the championship. If he doesn't, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure. But if you want me to think it's a success, he's got to win that Drivers' Championship. Second one is, unlike last season, I want to see you properly in the hunt for the Constructors. Don't have to win it. We don't care. Extra money's nice, but I get the wind tunnel time and CFD time, whatever. But we can't be looking at 3rd or 4th fastest team on the grid on a regular basis at any point in the season. That's unacceptable.
Now, I think there might be a more some sinister background stuff. So what I read recently was, Max Verstappen has given assurances that he will be at Red Bull till the end of 2026. So that's two seasons. Now, are you Red Bull going, oh, Max, you're adorning us with 2 more seasons. Oh, thank you so much. I don't think Red Bull's like that at all. I think Red Bull's pretty brutal And I think they'll be looking at that going, oh, so what you're saying is if we don't meet your lofty standards with the new 2026 regulations, you're off. So at that point, you go, well, are they going to adorn a new champion? Are they going to kind of look at, for example, 2014 with Sebastian Vettel? He wasn't getting any preferential treatment against Ricciardo. And in fact, I think Ricciardo outscored him quite handsomely in 2014. I can't remember the stats, but he definitely had preferential treatment against Mark Webber. And then you saw something kind of flip over as you go, well, at the end of 2013, he did this whole speech saying, oh, we don't know how long these things are going to last. Be really grateful because these things could end imminently, i.e. I know about the new engine regulations and this isn't going to suit us at all. And then that's it. He was off. So I do wonder whether Liam Lawson coming in now, they got everything they wanted out of Perez. They got the perfect case scenario with Verstappen winning the championship and them tanking the Constructors' Championship and getting more wind tunnel time for 2026. If they really get a hint, if Horner has a hint that Verstappen's on his way out, is this the time to go, right, 2025, yes, you're right, let's win the championship with Max Verstappen? Then it's a succession plan then. Whether Verstappen is actually going to leave or not, if he's not committed to 27, 28, then you start putting your thumb on the scale. And we've seen this. We saw it. I think we saw it with Vettel. I think we saw it with Vettel again at Ferrari. I think we saw it with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell as well. You just very gently start maneuvering the team towards another driver. And I wonder whether towards the end of 2025, we'll start seeing Red Bull shifting towards Liam Lawson. And actually, look, Liam's actually getting quite a lot of results here. And if they're not in the title fight, I wouldn't be surprised if then that changeover gets accelerated and gets brought forward, and you start to see Lawson. Oh well, we've got to let them have a fair fight. We've got to not have team orders. And look, actually Liam's pretty good here, even though he couldn't beat Tsunoda.
I think Jos Verstappen has too many fingers buried deep into the back of the management of that team.
That could have gone worse. That could have been worse. Okay, that sentence, that could have been a Kyle sentence. That could have been.
Controlling what that team do with regards to Max. I think if that Ford engine in 2026 is a dog, Max is not going to want to have what he had at the beginning of his Honda days where the engine constantly blows up. He's said it before. He has no interest in going backwards in the Formula One grid. He's either going to be at the front. If he can't be at the front, he will take his ball and go home. And he'll happily go off and do endurance and all those kind of things. My issue for Red Bull is, who have they got? Liam Lawson isn't the Max Verstappen person, isn't the person to take over from Max Verstappen. They don't seem to have anybody in their stable. And I believe if this Ford engine is as bad as people think it's going to be, Max then leaves, I don't know if Red Bull will be in the sport much longer, because you've got the board who've taken over from when Mateschitz died. They're not big on motorsport. They're kind of doing it because they have to. They don't want to spend all this money, and they're doing it because they have to because they're at the front. If they're at the back or falling back down the order and not getting all the plaudits, I can see them pulling.
Well, I think you hit very clearly on the other two things Red Bull has to do this season. One of them is they have to ensure that Lawson does better than Perez did. That's just a no-brainer. And for all of the reasons you mentioned. And the last thing they're going to have to do is convince Max that Ford Red Bull powertrain is not going to be the 2014 Renault power unit of 2026. They're going to have to convince him it's going to be competitive, because if he gets a sniff, it ain't going well. Yeah, I could absolutely see him say, sure, I'll pay whatever money. I'll go drive for Aston. I'll go drive for Mercedes. I'll go drive for, who's left? Ferrari? Who knows? Who knows where he might wind up, right?
Leave Ferrari alone. But when the Red Bull board, I think the other teams we've spoken about, it's much more clearly results based. So more points is better. more titles is better. With Red Bull, I feel like it's a bit more nefarious and political. So there's a lot more scenarios that constitute success. So, like, do they even want the Constructors' Championship? Like, is that a requirement? I can't see the board saying you must make sure that Liam Lawson has a car that he can drive as well. I think if he is floundering in the same way that Perez was, they probably will just leave him to the Sharks.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about Lawson that was said. Now, to point out that Lawson is backed by Marco. Marco and Horner may or may not be getting along at any point. But one of the things was said was that he has a very similar style and liking for the car setup that Max has. Obviously, we've heard that before, and it's been not necessarily true. But at least that's what's been put out there by their press agents.
All right. Why don't we go to Mercedes in next? However, before we go to Mercedes, I think we'll do these launch thingamajigs. However, let's. I like introducing you guys to my panel properly. Like, Alex, I'm gonna do, by the way, an audience survey thing in the show notes next week, and I'm just gonna go like, who's your favorite panelists? I'm not even including myself in that. Because it's a no-brainer.
Because you can't take the ego hit.
No, I'm the best. Yeah. I'm the best one. I think that
was my general thought.
No, I think we've established that I'm the best one. I might even add that to my Twitter handle. But more and more over the last few years, you guys have become like personalities on Missed Apex, and people, when you're not on, people ask for like, oh, where's Kyle? Where's Brad? And to a lesser extent, where's Alex? So. You just like, this whole thing is so that you can plug your YouTube video and then you're straight away being mean to me. Go on then, what's your rubbish karting video where you talk about, I failed to build a go-kart and I'll crash it eventually anyway.
I actually didn't have a single crash all season. Thank you very much.
That can't be true.
Yes, so at Alex Van Gien Racing, go onto your phone now and pull out your phone and go to YouTube and look for my name and like and subscribe to my channel. I'm only now 8 subs away from 1,200 subscribers. So we've had a good jump, which is great. I released a new video last week, which was my episode 3 of my kart rebuild. We're into the big stuff now of putting everything all properly together. It actually now looks like a go-kart rather than a few bits of metal. And I'm working on the episode 4 right now.
Alex, last year, maybe this time last year, I was in a marquee with you, watching you try to build and adjust a go-kart. And at that time, is it fair to say you did not know how to build and then race adjust a go-kart?
No. So when we started this journey of karting together, me and Brad, my thing to Brad was, you keep hold of my kart, you prep my kart, you build my kart, I get in and drive. And then very, very quickly, I just absolutely fell in love with the mechanicking side of it. And I've been like, no, Brad, I'm now going to bring my kart home after races this season. We'll see how long that keeps going with regards to the whole van hire and stuff. But no, I'm absolutely loving it. It's so much fun. And I've got lots of people who are building their own karts because this series has grown massively. GX UK has grown absolutely massively. We sold out 60 places on the grid in 2 hours. When they all went live, which is crazy. I've never seen a series grow that big that quickly. And yeah, I'm helping lots of people build their karts. Okay. So if you want to think about building a kart, watch the video and get inspired.
Okay, and we're karting with Brad next weekend, and so I mean, if you get beaten by me.
You're way lighter than me.
No, look, I think
15 kilos lighter than me.
Results.
You're good enough now that a 15 kilo deficit.
Is it 15 kilograms? It's not 15 kilograms.
I'm 90 kilos.
I don't know what 76. I am in. I don't know what I am in those space units.
I checked it up when we were talking pre-show.
Okay.
I think it was 76, right. I think you said.
So basically, check out Alex's videos, but if I beat him next weekend, then just delete your subscription, and I think you should delete your channel if I beat you next weekend. I think you should
come wearing a weighted vest and ankles and stuff and weigh up, then put your money where your mouth is. Skinny.
I don't know. I think the battle starts in the kitchen, Alex, that's all.
That's why I'm not in there at the moment.
All right. Go and check out Alex's YouTube channel. Matt will get a link to that video in the show notes. So whether you're on YouTube or on Spotify or on iTunes, there should be a clickable link right there. Matt, we're going to go through the launch dates and the livery stuff, when people can expect to find stuff. But your wife's second smutty F1 book has been teased.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Kiss and Collide is the title.
Kiss
the cover
and
is
Collide.
now available for
Right.
liking.
That's quite... Kiss and Collide. All right. That
That's
implies...
quite on the nose, isn't it?
That
It's
implies
like
that the
headlines,
protagonist...
but, we don't necessarily get to pick on
That
them.
implies that
Hey.
it's like two drivers that are off track. They have their romantic thing, and then they collide on the track. So if that's
All's
a
I'm
spoiler,
gonna say
right? Okay.
is that if you like the first book, I think the second book is significantly better.
All right.
It's a really good story. And if you like the first one and enjoyed it, you'll definitely love this second one.
Well, my wife liked the first one, so as soon as it is available on the Amazon Kindle thing that she uses, let me know and I'll tell her to download it.
We'll definitely let you know.
Links
and
in the
also,
oh, go on.
I was going to say, if you missed us at Joe's Pub with the New York City Ska Orchestra, April 20th, we'll be appearing
April!
at City Winery
That's
with
so far away.
DMC of Run DMC.
Okay, that's so far away. Before that, you're probably going to get the F1 movie. Now, have you seen the latest trailer for the F1 movie? Stuffy just shared it in our WhatsApp earlier today. But it's a very, very different trailer to the one that we got last year. So I think they rushed out a bit of a trailer last year with Brad Pitt. And it was Brad Pitt talking to one of his co-stars and going like, all right, the McLaren, Ferrari, Aston Martin, they have the advantage on the straights. Where we've got to get them is in the corners. And like you go, the corners! Oh no! Like the F1, a sport famous for being aerodynamically amazing in corners. Brad Pitt just reinvented all of that. Yeah, we got to build a car for combat. And then the manager goes, how am I supposed to make that safe? Who said anything about being safe? Well, the FIA. Like, there's a really strong history of, like, survival cells, of safety stuff. F1, more than any motorsport in the history of the world, really, really wants you to be safe. And, like, so that might have been dramatic, but all F1 fans and, people who've been watching for a long time looked at that trailer and went, what are you doing? The latest F1 trailer, no one speaks. And I think that is the way forward. That has to be the way forward.
Brad's been listening to us.
Yeah, it looks really exciting. So all the camera shots, like no issue with that. Everything looks great. They've really done a great job, I think, on the onboard. And most importantly, you haven't got Brad Pitt saying the opposite of everything that makes up Formula One. So Matt, when are we going? Oh, sorry, go on, Alex.
What I'm saying is once that film is announced, you book a whole bunch of tickets.
We have to.
You book a whole bunch of tickets at the cinema closest to your house. We go and watch it. We come straight back to your house and instantly do a podcast.
Hang on a minute. So you're north-ish London, like Brad's Milton Keynes, Kyle's Cambridge.
I will travel.
Yeah. So I think we'll find a cinema in Milton Keynes to one of the earliest showings. We'll book a venue to then do a review of it and hang out with some listeners. How's that? That sounds good.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. We'll do that. So Matt, liveries. When are we expecting to see? I don't know what even is an F1 car launch anymore.
Okay, so this is why I want to break it down. And to be clear, we don't have all the information from all of the teams. But what we're going to start with is the big collective launch. We should see all of the liveries, I believe, on February 18th at the O2 Arena. Now, if
I haven't been invited.
Yeah. So, I mean, you and 18,000 other people. But no. Williams on February 14th will be doing a filming day, but they're doing it in a one-off livery, so we're not going to get to see the real livery till later. Haas is doing one with Ocon on the 16th of February, and we should see that footage, I think, on the 18th. Ferrari will reveal their car on the 18th, and they'll be doing their classic Fiorana drive the car out the garage on the following day, the 19th. Aston will be doing a launch on the 23rd and a shakedown on the 24th. And Mercedes will be waiting till the 24th to see the new car, not the livery. and doing their shakedown on the 25th, which is, I believe, the day before testing actually starts. And that's what we have so far.
Alex, I can't get excited about any of these. I just don't. Like, they don't show anything anymore, and they shouldn't. Like, they shouldn't show anything, should they? So the livery reveal is actually the only significant thing that we'll see.
And I can't see any of them changing. We haven't really had a big change. We might get a change from Stake F1, whatever they're called these days. They might have a significant different livery, but I used to get excited about it. I'm a livery guy. I slaved over the livery for my car with the designer, and I get really excited about that kind of stuff. But it has just been so meh the last 6-7 years with livery launches. Why can't we have cars on pedestals and the Spice Girls singing songs when the car's built behind them in
that's what I
place
really
in Germany
want. Yeah.
what I really want. I don't care.
Alpine
just get the cars on track and do some testing.
Alpine broke me last year. Alpine broke me last year because we know we've worked with the talent they've got in the livery department at Alpine, and they just hands tied behind their back, absolutely no chance to make something actually worthwhile. Hopefully we haven't got all the carbon fiber this year. Is this the year that the regulation came in where they can have more paint? Please.
I don't know. I'm just thinking, it's hard for creativity to survive the corporate boardroom.
Fair enough. Right, so we're going to go to Mercedes now. So what should the board be saying to Toto Wolff? What should they be saying is their expectation? It is a funny one. So we've had a few noises and a few kind of murmurings coming out, and they are pushing Russell. I think the narrative is they're pushing George Russell more than Antonelli. So it looks like this whole thing of, we let Verstappen go, we're not going to let Antonelli go, has shifted a little bit towards Russell is now ready to fight for a world championship. And I found that quite an interesting kind of narrative arc, because it really was all about, I know we've lost Hamilton, but why didn't you give Hamilton the big contract he wanted? Why didn't you give Hamilton the contract that Ferrari gave him? Well, drivers have a shelf life. We missed out on Verstappen. We really want Antonelli. Oh, by the way, I want to say missed out on Verstappen. That was missed out on Verstappen as a F3 driver coming into Formula One. And they have then subsequently also missed out on the clear negotiations that were clearly happening to get Max Verstappen away from Red Bull in the light of the Christian Horner WhatsApp scandals, which seems to have failed. And then now the narrative is onto George Russell, who potentially was a driver that would have been out of a seat if those negotiations had gone well with Verstappen. If they'd have managed to wrestle Verstappen away from that controversy and go, come on, there's a safe harbour over here, here's all the money, they would have partnered him with Antonelli, not with George Russell. But now the narrative is George Russell is ready to be world champion. What do we think of that?
Well,
nothing. The panel thinks
Mercedes
nothing
has to build a car that can win a championship first. So the first thing I'm going to say is, if you want a successful season, you're going to have to finish at least third in the Constructors' Championship.
I think third place is what they say is an absolute minimum for that team this year, which is Red Bull. Potentially, there's blood in the water there. So
Red Bull are gettable this year, isn't it? Yeah,
I really believe so. I think whatever car they give Max, he'll drive the wheels off of it, and he will be the star. But my understanding is Mercedes thinks they've made a step, but not enough to be at the top. And again, I think there'll be.
Do you have a new in at Mercedes? Don't have to say
my in who was at Red Bull's moved to Mercedes.
Okay.
So he moved from the aero team at Red Bull to now the aero team at Mercedes. He said Red Bull were very frantic and very intense all the time, and Mercedes are a bit more laid back.
That's interesting.
Which is an interesting thing. He said it's a nicer place to work, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I think we're in for a mediocre season from Mercedes. I think the other thing will be is please don't crash, boys. Please, Antonelli, just don't be amazing for 3/4 of a lap and then bin it at the last corner, but we can say you're amazing for that part of the lap. Be amazing every lap, please. But I know nothing about Kimi. I understand he's very highly thought of, but I'll be very interested to see how he does against George, and if he ends up being as quick, if not quicker than George, how the team reacts.
Well, since we're talking about drivers, here's my minimum ask, assuming they produce a reasonable car. I think Russell has to finish 5th or 4th in the Drivers' Championship. And I think he's going to need at least 15 podiums. Now, hear me out. Last season, Russell and Hamilton combined had 9 podiums, which equals the number of podiums Carlos Sainz had on his own. So I think that's going to be a key performance indicator for Mercedes, is getting Russell up and onto the podium a lot more often. The other thing is they are going to need Antonelli to perform. And I expect a top 10 in the drivers for him at a minimum.
Wow, that's so, guys.
That's very low.
It's such a, you're saying like if Russell is 5th and Antonelli's like 9th or 10th, you're going to go, that's all right for Mercedes.
He's an absolute rookie, even in a fast car.
I think 5th or 6th for both. I think 5th or 6th for the team in the drivers, with the 2 drivers 5th and 6th. I think that's considered as all right.
Yeah, you can't be outside the
5th
top 8.
and 4th, Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen. There's 3. Look at who he's competing against afterwards. Right?
No. For Antonelli,
exactly. So 5th and 6th is a bare minimum.
Yeah, no,
4th and 5th for Russell is entirely reasonable. Antonelli, top 10, he's a rookie. You don't know what he's going to do.
No way. Right. Okay. If you're saying you're finishing 2 places outside of the top 4 teams, so out of the 8 drivers in the top 4 teams, Antonelli has to finish 8th, obviously, at least. Like, and then Lawson, you would want to finish above Lawson, surely. So no, I think 7th is the minimum for
Lewis
Antonelli.
had a horrendous season and finished 7th. I'd expect a rookie performing quite well, not having the horrendous time that Lewis did, should be at least that.
So Mark says, Merc need more consistency, hopefully not consistently bad. And unfortunately, I think that's the one area that Mercedes, I don't think anyone thinks Mercedes are going to be consistent next year. So no one's looking at Mercedes and going, oh, okay, well, they can turn things around and have a much more, consistent top 3, performance, because the way their car is set up is when they're good, they're very, very good. When they're bad, they're very, very bad. They're not going to change that fundamentally in 2025, I don't think.
No, because they lack the tools to really solve the problem, which is related to the wind tunnel and the rolling road. But you do hit on an interesting thing. If they don't make a significant improvement over how incredibly specific they are with regards to climate and circuit, then I think that is a failure for them. That's like a big, big failure for them.
My outstanding concern for Mercedes with their drivers is win or bin, or what I would say is going for low percentage, high reward tactics. So that has definitely been the George Russell way. So Russell would rather have 1 win doing like an alternate cheeky strategy. He'd rather have that 1 win and then 3 anonymous races, and he would consider that a victory, than say those same 4 races, but go and pick up P4, P5. Do you know what I mean? So
3rd, 4th, 3rd.
Yeah, exactly. It's Alex. We see this in iRacing and in karting all the time. It's a classic win or bin mentality, but it doesn't give you the best championship points. It does give you the better odd glory moments.
I'm hoping that was because the driver in the other seat was Lewis Hamilton, and he wanted to do whatever he could to beat Lewis Hamilton. I'm hoping, as a George Russell fan, that he takes this now as, right, I am team leader now, and I need to lead this Kimi kid and let him follow me and me do the proper, normal, by the numbers strategy stuff. And he should follow suit, and the team should make him follow in what I do and treat me as number one. He hasn't got that whole carrot of I have to beat Lewis, and I think this potentially could be a really good turning year for George. Otherwise, it could go the other way.
As a not George Russell fan, the funniest possible thing that could happen is that Russell does turn that leaf and goes, okay, I'll now go for the high percentage tactics, pick up my results, really kind of have a mature drive going forward for the best championship result. But Antonelli is the one just going win or bin, and he's like behind him, burning up his tyres, going, Russell's holding me up. You've got to let me past. Why is he going so slow? That would be the best.
I love the non-zero possibility that we'll get a repeat of Hamilton and Alonso at McLaren, only for like third or fourth. Overall, the drama would be, it would just be, chef's kiss.
No, because what we're going to get is we're going to get George versus Max. Again, it might only be for third or fourth, but we're going to get George versus Max. And I'm lavishing at the chance that... That's not the right word. I'm
salivating.
I'm lapping up at the chance that Max and George are going to come to some serious blows this season and going to give us some great fireworks.
I agree with you there. They're the two most likely to do each other in on a regular basis.
Okay, so I think we've covered 4 teams there. I think we can continue this into next week. If Mike Caulfield doesn't unexpectedly have a second child on Monday, we will be speaking to him on Tuesday. I know, I say to people, like, for goodness sake, don't have one. But if you have one, for the love of all that's good, don't have 2. My goodness.
However, having said that, my eldest went away for 4 days, and we had to look after our youngest today.
Yeah.
We had to play with her and do stuff rather than just letting them two play together. So there is a thing to it.
That's true. And also, when I say in front of my kids that we should only have had one kid, my second kid gets really upset. Oh, what you say? I didn't say which kid we would have kept, but she gets super upset. Okay. Oh, I forgot. Right. Okay, so we'll continue this going forward to next Sunday. However, there is one news item. There might be a couple. I think the continuing saga of the FIA president now clamping his authority down. We had the new rules where he can now fine people. And I say I know it's going to be delivered through the stewards officially and delivered through his lackeys. But there have been a few more things that he's come out with now. So one is that there's going to be multiple race directors tried. And so we had Niels Vidic let go last season. And the allegations in the press is basically because he was not a yes man and he was trying to, counter the direct interference that Mohammed Ben Sulayem was imposing on Formula One. And then there's also this latest thing where he's really clamping down on, we don't want drivers swearing on the radio and we're going to impose more fines. We don't want people to think of us as a dirty sport. So I'm old enough to remember, Alex, when he said he was going to step back from the spotlight and not say stuff, but he's saying a lot of stuff.
Honestly, this kind of harks back to the burlesque era where he was like, I will make the decision and the decision that I make is the right decision. And I really, really don't like that. The swearing thing annoys me because, I'm in 2 camps with this where let them say what they want in the car. They're driving at 200 miles an hour around corners with other people driving next to them. And most of them are talking.
It's the same in every sport, Alex. It's the same in every sport. So, if a guy's just done 100 meters, or you've got a woman that's just done 500 meters and they can barely breathe, and you put a mic in front of their face, that as a broadcaster, that's on you. Yeah. So 300 miles an hour incidents. If you want to broadcast that, that's on you. I've never had a problem with swearing in the cockpit. That's up to the sport to decide. It's when you're stood in a chair and you get asked, how did the race go? And you go, oh, Jeff. You go, oh, grow up. You are a professional and you are a broadcaster and you should be media trained enough to not do that, to not F and Jeff.
I have no issue with them being told before every press conference, please try not to swear.
Yeah.
There are children watching. My kids watch. And it's and I don't need that. We don't need that language at that point, which is a work meeting. That's what it is. It's a work meeting.
Exactly.
However, on the flip side of that, when you have drivers who, you've only got 4 British drivers, everybody else, English is not their mother tongue. So they go, if I was one of those foreign drivers who was potentially getting, I'd be like, okay, I'll tell you what, because English isn't my native language and swearing is part of what I've been taught to express myself in learning the English language, I'm only going to do interviews in my native language.
Yeah.
Because I can control myself in my native language.
I bet they don't know.
Yeah, but it's never going to end with just the press conferences. And the real issue here, as we all know, is that rather than work with the drivers to come up with an acceptable solution, one is just being forced upon them. And so I absolutely expect the drivers to take every loophole and try and wrap it back around the FIA.
If you are in a F1 team listening to this, like I like to use the word turnips. So, for example, you turnip, yeah. If you are, have the ear of a driver and you want to send a message to the FIA, an ironic substitution word, and you want to use turnips, I would be forever grateful. Please suggest that to your drivers. But it does show to me that the relationship between the FIA and the Grand Prix Drivers Association and Liberty Media is not healthy, and it's yet another example of that. And what you're going to find now is that you've got these new race directors coming in. I heavily suspect that the ones that are in line with what the FIA president wants will last a lot longer than the ones who are not in line with that. And that seems to be the way the FIA is being run at the moment. And it's less cracks appearing at the moment than giant chasms. So what it feels like is we are now in the end game. There's no more pretense that the FIA is trying to play Liberty's media's game. This now feels like a proper power play. Accept my way. This is how I'm doing things, and this is how it's going to be. What are you going to do about it? So this feels like the sort of the last stand of the FIA, if you like, and that is a drama that is going to unfold over the course of the next season. Thank you for listening to Missed Apex podcast. Thank you to the people who, during a time of no Formula One, have decided to become patrons of a Formula One podcast. Thank you. That has been incredibly motivating over the off season, especially the last couple of weeks, where I've been personally struggling and having to get the likes of Kyle from the MotoGP podcast to come and sub in. But it is much appreciated. So the things you can do to support Missed Apex, patreon.com/Missed Apex, $5 a month. Me and Matt were just discussing we've got to get a Patreon pod going soon because we've got a lot of personal stuff to share. You'll get an ad-free feed and come and join us in our Patreon Discord as well. And you can leave any time. So, for example, it's the 9th of February now. So if you join now, you won't get charged until the beginning of March. So sign up with the intention to stop before the end of March and then forget. Patreon.com/Missed Apex. Also, just tell people, because lots of your friends and your networks will be looking for F1 podcasts when theirs have stopped producing content over the winter. So just go, no, Missed Apex, they're still doing stuff. Go and check them out. That would really, really help us. Until we see you next, work hard. Oh, no, hang on. No, go and follow Alex. Sorry, Alex. Go and follow Alex. Links in the show notes below. Very good videos, by the way. Very well produced. He speaks very well. If he had more stick-to-itiveness, you could be a YouTube star.
It's more a case if I didn't have a full-time job, children,
and a family,
and the fact that I had to do all my cart work outside.
Yeah,
it would all be done by now. Otherwise,
when I was in your exact phase of family life, I had a full-time engineering career, and I was on radio, and I had a full-time content creation career. But I guess hard work's not for everyone. No, honestly, Alex works so hard at his YouTube videos, and they are really, really good. Go and check them out. Link in the show notes below. Check out Matt's wife's books, and go and see Matt in April. Matt, You can't
With
advertise
DMC
things.
of Run DMC. The
can't
tickets are going to
advertise
sell out. City
thing-
Winery. Just go.
Not
Just
really.
go.
That annoys me. That's like people who pre-order things. Who has that kind of patience? Anyway, we will see you midweek and next Sunday as well, where I think we'll continue our board expectations. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast.